Great. Thank you. So our next speaker is Lindsay Sproule from College of Veterinarians of Ontario, Canada. Lindsay, do you want to come to the floor? Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I am very delighted to be here to be presenting on this topic, and I want to recognize Linda and her team at the RCVS for doing such an amazing job at hosting us. So I'm wondering if we can do a round of applause for the RCVS. So I also wanted to thank you all for having me and for allowing me to speak on this topic. It feels really great to be a part of this community, and I have learned a lot from your presentations, and thank you so much for sharing your expertise, your challenges, and your questions, because we're all, as I've learned over the past couple of days, we're all in the same position. So it's really nice to sort of be in that sort of like that community and to have that involvement. So the purpose of my presentation today is to share an overview of a recently completed project in Canada that focused on creating a modern licensure pathway for internationally educated veterinarians. It is recognized that there are challenges with the traditional licensing process, of which I'll go into greater details later on, but that it is not always fit for purpose. And the goal of creating this pathway was to make sure that the skills of internationally educated veterinarians could be fairly assessed, just like Suzanne was talking about, especially in the specific areas of veterinary medicine, without needing to go through that full traditional licensing process. So today I'll walk you through why we started this project, what we hope to achieve, what we did along the way, and what we accomplished and what's coming next. We're proud of the progress that we've made, but we're very much still in the middle of this story, so I'll go into further detail about that, but we're looking forward to what this means for the future of veterinary medicine. Okay, so on this slide is a bit of a Google AI overview of what the College of Veterinarians of Ontario is responsible for. And I'm willing to admit that I do like this feature. It gives me a quick overview of whatever topic that I'm looking for. But as other presenters have talked about today, obviously we can't rely on AI. So I am your substitute for AI today because I will give you the full overview of what the college is responsible for. So just to sort of set the context, so in Canada, the practice of veterinary medicine is regulated at the provincial and territorial level. Each veterinary regulatory body has a council which sets the organization's strategic objectives and policy direction, and while the staff, with the direction of a registrar and CEO, carries out the day-to-day operations of the college. All of the registrars of these veterinary regulatory bodies in Canada are part of a Canadian Council of Veterinary Registrars, which is known as the CCVR. We love our acronyms. The CCVR collaborates on issues of national importance in the regulation of veterinary medicine. So provincial veterinary regulatory organizations obviously have a mandate to protect the public interest and do so by licensing qualified veterinarians, investigating complaints and concerns regarding veterinarians, holding discipline hearings as necessary, developing public policy relevant to the regulation of veterinary medicine, completing facility inspections and granting certificates of facility accreditation, and promoting quality assurance. And our current licensing process, not different from what we heard from the GMC or the RCVS. Individuals need to have a degree in veterinary medicine. They need to complete a national competency examination, undergo a language proficiency assessment where applicable, and a review of past conduct and any fitness to practice concerns. And in Canada, we use the National Examining Board, and that's through the Canadian Veterinary Medical Association as our third-party assessment provider. Okay, This is my fun slide. So we are located in Guelph, Ontario. So I've highlighted sort of geographically where we're located. You can see that we're in southern Ontario, close to the border. We are an hour away from Toronto, and both the regulatory body for veterinarians and the veterinary school in Ontario, both located in Guelph. Our provincial ministry that oversees veterinary regulation is also in Guelph, so that is convenient. We don't have to travel very far to talk to each other. We have a staff size of 35, and so they say the picture is worth 1,000 words. So I wanted to share a couple of images that give you a glimpse into what our organization's culture. So culture is something that we truly value. It's the foundation of our work, and we believe that we have a strong set of values that guide us to foster innovation, empower collaboration, gain and share knowledge, explore new ideas with curiosity. And this culture creates an environment where creative thinking thrives and new approaches are encouraged. So the project that I'm sharing today is a great example of how having this culture supports us in trying new things and embracing change. And so just to draw your attention to the middle photo, this was taken from our Denim on Denim Day, which is also known as the Canadian Tuxedo, and I think should be at least a provincially recognized holiday, something that I'm working on, and we'll see if it happens in my lifetime. So to help with everyone's understanding and sort of to set the stage, I just wanted to share some information about the Canadian landscape. So we are a large country, the second largest in the world. We have a population of 41 million. We have 16,000 veterinarians. We have 5 veterinary schools. I did actually try to figure out how many animals are in Canada, and I have numbers, but we don't need to go into that much detail for this presentation. I also did a quick Google search, and Google tells me that the United Kingdom could fit into Canada over 40 times. So I'm not sure what anybody can do with that information, but there you have it. Okay, so to drill down more specifically to the Ontario landscape, at the end of last year, we had approximately 5,700 licensed members. And if you remember back to the previous slide where it said that there were 16,000 veterinarians in total, so you'll see that Ontario does have the lion's share of veterinarians in Canada. You can see from this chart, and I hope that it is visible, that the majority of licensed veterinarians in Ontario received their degree in Ontario, but I think it's important to acknowledge the 30% or approximately 1,700 licensed members that received their degree outside of Canada and US and would have had gone through that traditional licensing exam process. So just to continue on with that Ontario-specific landscape, it's important to note that for the first time in more than 35 years, the class size of the Ontario Veterinary College Doctor of Veterinary Medicine program will increase from 105 domestic students to 125, and bringing that total number of graduates to 140 per year. So there's 10 international graduates as well. And below that is a chart that represents applicants who've received a license by where they've received a veterinary degree for the past 5 years. And so I guess interesting to note, similar to Suzanne's number, that our numbers for internationally educated veterinarians keep going up every year. And that is for a variety of reasons. I could go on about those details forever, but just it's important to note that we are still seeing those increases, and that will have an impact on our licensing exams that we're trying to offer. So Some of you may be familiar with the traditional board exam process for veterinarians in North America. So if you graduate from an American veterinary medical school, you need to complete the NAVLE, and then you're set. You can apply for licensure. If you have graduated from a non-listed school, then everyone's placed into that same category, and you need to complete the basic clinical science exam, the NAVLE, the preliminary surgical assessment, and the clinical proficiency exam. So just to provide a little bit more detail for those who are not familiar with that, so the basic and clinical science exam and the NAVLE, they're both computer-based exams. You're taking those at a proctored exam center. The preliminary surgical assessment and the clinical proficiency exam, they are only offered in one province in Canada, which is Saskatchewan right now, and for English. And then if you want to take it in French, then you have to take it at the University of Montreal. So as you might imagine, with the clinical proficiency exam and the preliminary surgical assessment, that these examinations are very expensive, not only to run, but they're expensive to go through for candidates. So that clinical, and I'm not sure, people are going to have to do some math in their heads because I didn't prepare this information in advance, but the clinical proficiency exam costs about 10,000 Canadian dollars. So it is very, very expensive, and it is delivered over the course of a couple of days. Okay, so we don't have exact data about sort of average time to get through this process, but we do know sort of anecdotally that it takes approximately 2 to 5 years to get through all of those 4 exams. And sort of recognizing the sort of the fairness aspect of our examinations, individuals who are going through this, if they're internationally educated, they are in the settlement process. They are new to Canada. They are working other jobs. They are supporting families, just to sort of put that fully into perspective of the person's entire journey that they're going through. These examinations are based on the general licensure model. So if you've gone through these exams, you come out supposed to be coming out with a general license that allows you to practice within any scope or on any species. So these examinations and assessments don't take into account any of your previous experience that you may have gained. And individuals, they are examined in all area of practice, and it's recognized some individuals would like to continue working within that species or within that scope that they were previously practicing within. So switching gears and moving to challenges and opportunities. As I indicated in the previous slide, the licensing system, as we know, built on that traditional general license model, and applicants need to demonstrate broad competence across all main practice areas in order to attain the license. The traditional examination process that we have today was originally developed when there were much less people going through this system, and this approach has and continues to serve its purpose, but it's not always worked well for internationally educated applicants who have had a narrow education, or for more experienced practitioners that have been practicing veterinary medicine in a focused scope of practice. So it's always felt like a reasonable solution to issue licenses that are limited to a veterinarian's area of demonstrated competence. However, we did not possess the competency assessment tools to allow for this type of change to take place. So we had the publication of the North American Essential Competency Profile published in 2002, which provides a foundation for the development of new competency assessment tools. So in Ontario, we do consider ourselves to be quite lucky because even though our legislation is outdated, it does allow individuals to be able to apply for a restricted license. And this is a license that is granted by the college's registration committee, meaning that anyone can apply and can be considered for a restricted license that has terms, limits, and conditions. The committee reviews these requests on a case-by-case basis, and the committee must be convinced that it's in the public interest to grant that license. The majority of these requests that we receive for restricted licenses come from individuals who are internationally educated and who are requesting either a complete exemption from having to take the national board exams or are asking for a partial exemption. So just to provide a couple of examples of what that looks like, when individuals who have passed those first two exams, so the basic clinical science exam and the NAVLE, after they've passed those two exams, they can get a restricted license to work under supervision for a period of 25 months while they're going on to complete those other two examinations. So they are able to be in the practice, using their skills, earning an income as a veterinarian. The other sort of most commonly used restricted license is for internationally educated veterinarians who have not done those traditional exams, but they've gone on to achieve board certification. So our registration committee feels quite comfortable granting a restricted license limited to their specialty, whether that be a scope or a species, and then they're able to start practicing and using that board certification as proof of competence in that particular area. So looking at the challenges within the current system and considering the external factors such as a pandemic and immigration really caused us to think about the possibility of rethinking that general licensure model and what it could look like if there was a pathway that allowed individuals to demonstrate competence in a specific area and obtain a license limited to that area of competence. Okay, so now we get to the good stuff, talk about the project. So having that thinking as a basis, for the last several years, the College of Veterinarians of Ontario has collaborated with that CCVR, the Canadian Council of Veterinary Registrars, to develop a modern licensure pathway for internationally educated veterinarians to assess competence within that limited practice area. And this came with funding support from the Canadian Veterinary Medical Association. And as I previously mentioned, it was necessary to have that competency profile in place to be able to build a competency-based pathway. And as a first step, the CCVR undertook an initial project to identify the best tools for assessing the specific competencies of experienced individuals within a limited scope of practice. And through this work, there were two tools that were identified as ideal. So a portfolio assessment and a supervised practice assessment. And to build this new pathway, we knew that we needed to engage experts in regulation and assessment and psychometrics to ensure that we were measuring assessment was done in a proper manner, meaning that we wanted to end up with tools that are reliable, valid, and legally defensible. So there was two consultant groups that were used to help us with this. And these experts worked closely with a subgroup of the CCVR, and they focused on three streams: companion animal, production animal, and equine. Just to save the question from later on, the production animal one is very broad, obviously, so it is sort of like subcategorized after that, so whether that be poultry or bovine, dairy, it is narrowed, swine, I guess is the other one, narrowed after that. We've started with these three streams, but there's potential to adapt these tools for additional streams in the future. Just to back up, so these assessment tools, the portfolio and assessment and the supervised practice assessment, they're designed to evaluate both those clinical and non-clinical skills, which we feel is critical to make sure that individuals are demonstrating all competencies. So, as I said, consultants were key in this work, and CAMPROF consultants were one of those consultants that were asked to be involved because they had that expertise in regulation. So to ensure the process was psychometrically sound, a rigorous approach was followed that included blueprinting, standard setting, and development of a scoring rubric. Okay, so we also brought in subject matter experts, which are veterinarians, who provided clinical input on what skills should be assessed and where that cut score should be set. And I guess it's important to recognize that these assessments are very different from the traditional standardized exams, like multiple choice exams, where every candidate has that same experience. Here, because we're assessing individuals in real practice settings, added to the complexity of this process. Okay, so the first stage of the pathway is that portfolio, and it involves meeting a set of entry requirements. So candidates, of course, must have completed their education, have at least 5 years of experience, and if required, passed a language proficiency test. And then once they have met those requirements, then they're able to continue on with the stream. So moving directly into that portfolio, which is an online tool, and candidates can see a list of competencies aligned with the essential competencies. I feel like I've said that word way too many times now, and begin uploading evidence to just demonstrate they've met each one. So extensive training resources were provided to help the candidates understand what types of evidence could be submitted and how to upload it. So evidence that was submitted was completed courses, course curricula, videos demonstrating practical skills, and research papers and publications. Each portfolio was reviewed by 2 assessors working in the same area of practice as the candidate, and the portfolio acted as a screening tool, ensuring that the individual generally meets the required competencies before moving on to that supervised clinical practice. So the second portion of the assessment takes place on site in a veterinary facility and lasts between 1 to 5 weeks. The first week is an orientation, and the remaining time is focused on evaluating the candidate's practice. So each candidate is assessed by 2 people. One is an on-site supervisor, and then one is a remote assessor. And the dual assessor model was intentional. Okay, thank you. It prepares an extra check and balance because the on-site supervisor could be the candidate's current or future employer, and which introduces potential bias and either being too lenient or too strict. So the remote assessor helps mitigate that risk. The same tool was used as the portfolio, and I saw some people taking pictures of the QR code, so that will take you to the North American Essential Competency Profile. Here's an example of the scoring rubric, which was developed by the psychometricians with the subject matter experts. And we just wanted to make sure that there was fairness in the evaluation. We have been talking about rubrics and standard setting throughout this last couple days, so I'll go past this one. Okay, so our pilot project began in 2004. I'll just do a quick summary of this. So there was 22 candidates from Ontario and Alberta that began the pilot. And just to be clear, there is broad national support for this project, but only Ontario and Alberta have the ability to grant these restricted licenses right now, so that's why we see sort of limited participation. Everyone is eager to change their bylaws and legislation so that they do have ability to issue these restricted licenses, but we're just not there yet. 15 completed and passed the portfolio, and this was an opportunity to test our eligibility criteria, and there were some learnings. Some people further removed from clinical practice and don't have recency really did struggle with showing evidence of competence, and then 12 of the 15 successfully completed that supervised practice assessment. So in terms of outcomes, we received our report in February of this year, and it was confirmed that it is a valid and reliable tool to be used in this manner for limited licensure, so it was deemed fit for purpose. The report also included a number of lessons learned to improve the implementation process. For example, we need to consider cost limitations and definitely do some refining of the policies and procedures. So, and then I'm happy to report that the individuals who completed the whole entire process were able to receive their full limited license in Alberta and Ontario. Okay, so next steps. It's at this point, the report has been shared with all the different provinces. They're taking it back to their councils to be reviewed and approved. And I can say that it was reviewed and approved by the council in Ontario in June, which is exciting. The National Examining Board has agreed to assist with the national implementation. And as you can imagine, the work to get this underway will be significant and timely. So they need to hire staff, engage a psychometrician, and they would like to do a test launch in the first half of 2026 with a full implementation later in 2026. So I'm as excited as anyone to see what that looks like and to hear what will happen. So we've shared a lot of information about this project in our newsletters. There is a lot of excitement about it. Word is spreading amongst the internationally educated veterinarians that are eager to participate, and the response has been overwhelmingly positive. So thank you for letting me chat about this today.
Thanks, Lindsay. And I've been with the vets for 7 years, and limited licensure has been talked about over in the UK as long as I've been here, so probably a lot longer. So thank you. So any questions quickly from the audience before we move to the next speaker?
Thanks very much. Now you've established a route to limited licensure for international graduates, will you be permitting limited licensure for Canadian graduates, and what will that look like?
Yeah, it's definitely something that has been considered. When the tool was developed, there was always that thought in mind that it could not just be used solely for internationally educated veterinarians, but could be used for domestic grads as well.
So is that a yes?
Yeah. It has. I haven't. No one has. All of the pilot participants were internationally educated veterinarians, and as I said, we're looking to refine those policies and procedures. So that hasn't been captured formally, but it's on the table.
Can I just ask how the community in Canada is sort of responding to that? Is it warmly received? Is it how are people feeling about that as a general approach?
Yeah, like specifically to the domestic grads piece. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think that I could say, just because I don't think that there's an awareness of the project within the domestic grads or sort of within the broader like licensed veterinarians right now. So that will be something that we'll have to work out in the development of those policies and procedures.
Great. Any more questions? No, lovely. Thank you so much, Lindsay. Thanks very much.